We're continuing to explore prospect solutions for the Dolphins in the 2025 NFL Draft. Today, looking at interior offensive line candidates for the Dolphins pick at number 48.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami, and the NFL Draft lead for the 33rd team. I want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it. Here on the Locked On Network, today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. We are back to the offensive side of the ball. We did the whole detour yesterday with defensive tackles and free agency, the NFL draft, and double dipping with Calais Campbell, going back to Arizona. Happy trails to Calais. But we're going to keep focused on this process, right? And the pursuit of potential solutions at each one of the spots that we perceive to be some of the bigger question marks for the Dolphins with the NFL draft 3 weeks from today. That's the first night. So we're getting down to it as it pertains to the final stretch and teams finalizing their boards. And the majority of my top of board is finalized. It's now just a matter of kind of figuring out how the rest of things are going to shake out at the bottom. So it makes it easier for me to look at pick number 48 and say, hey, who are the options on the offensive line that you really like for potentially Miami? Now, I'm going to acknowledge some names here. We're going to talk about three. We're going to talk about Donovan Jackson from Ohio State. We're going to talk about Jonah Savaiinaea from Arizona. And we're going to talk about Mbow from Purdue as the three spotlighted players. All three have played tackle at some point in college, but Donovan Jackson was predominantly a guard this past year at Ohio State before Josh Simmons went down with an injury and they kicked him out to left tackle. Nice to know you have that level of positional flex at your disposal. I want to acknowledge some names that either we talked about last week when we did offensive line, or look at some names that are probably in the in-between. In between 13 and 48 might not be options unless you either reached or one slid to 48. But realistically, I'm not going to sit here and project that Josh Connerly from Oregon makes it to 48 overall. I think he's got a pretty good chance to be a top 40 pick when it's all said and done. I don't think he's an option at 13. I really like him. I like him within the Dolphins scheme and projection and potentially being a guard. The Dolphins worked with him at the Senior Bowl. Ariante Ursary from Minnesota kind of falls in that same bucket. Gray Zabel, I think, probably falls in that bucket as well. It sounds like there's some momentum for him being a top 25 pick. Is he going to be the best player available for me at 13 overall? No, not really. Especially because I don't think there's any tackle upside there whatsoever. So we talked about Will Campbell. We talked about Josh Simmons. We talked about Kelvin Banks. I don't think there's a chance that Armand Mbow makes it to you. We just acknowledged Josh Connerly, Ariante Ursary, Gray Zabel as kind of guys that are in between. And then Tyler Booker, who, if the Dolphins are going to totally overhaul their scheme and change the identifying pillars of what an offensive lineman for this scheme looks like, I think that's the biggest thing. Right? It's not, we need to totally overhaul what we're looking for in offensive line. No, we do. You just need to go stop banking on players that have been in the pipeline for a little bit and get more talented options. That was the biggest issue the Dolphins had last year. It was not only were the players not great fits athletically for what you're looking to do with the guard spots, they weren't talented either. So it puts you in this conflict of they bet on familiarity. It didn't pay off. And I think that's part of the reason why you saw some of the offense kind of go into its shell last year, as it became apparent that this bet that we placed and we're trying to problem solve and work around it didn't materialize. And that kind of leaves you without a lot of pivot options because it's a finite resource league. So I'm less interested personally in saying, I'm going to tear up the book on wide zone offense and draft a Tyler Booker because he's 3 yards in a cloud of dust and is going to maul the point of attack, because I don't think he's got a lot of success playing up on the second level and cutting off linebackers and helping create explosive plays. I'd rather just get guys that are more talented that fit the system. And that's the solution for me. So that's how we get to the 3 names that I want to talk about here. I would say if you were to move down from 13, I think Gray Zabel could be a great choice. I think Josh Connerly could be a viable option for you as well. But with the picks the Dolphins currently have, I'm trying to thread the needle and not assume a trade down is going to happen or a trade up is going to happen. I want to present players that I think have the best chance to be there with each one of the Dolphins picks that they're currently scheduled to have. Because we don't have enough time in the world to do, I do a team building podcast, and we do draft every week all year long. And I still wouldn't have enough time to get into every player the depth that I would like to. So let's go to Donovan Jackson, who is a player who has grown on me more and more as this process has unfolded. 6'3" 5/8", 315 pounds, 83 3/4 inch wingspan. That's 95th percentile for the wingspan. Has sufficient tackle length, but I think he plays much more as a guard. And if you were to take and boil down the pros and cons of an Austin Jackson and put it at a natural guard position, I see a lot of parallels. And what I like about that is there's an explosive element to his game that he's really able to cover a lot of ground as a bigger bodied player and a long-limbed player in a very short amount of time. And he creates a lot of force and a lot of power. And it's not just, oh, well, I'm going to get my hands set on you like Tyler Booker, and I'm going to steadily create vertical displacement in the running. He can do it in a horizontal plane. He can do it in vertical plane. He can do it up on the second level. He can do it outside the numbers. Like any possible way that you can implement offensive linemen to create blocks, not just on the first level, but horizontally and in space. That's what Donovan Jackson does really, really well. And he has a very big gravitational pull because of his size and wingspan that he has at 95th percentile for wingspan. So the positives on the report from the 33rd team, again, I'm not going to just sit here and read the whole thing. Possesses strong grip strength to latch and secure defenders once his hands are fit on their chest. Has core and upper body strength to absorb power rushes that attempt to work directly through his frame and pass protection. Likeable movement at the point of attack on solo blocks and double teams that hit between the tackles. So there is some downhill appeal here for him as well. And I don't know that he would play next to Austin Jackson, but man, you put him and Austin Jackson next to each other. And then if you had like James Daniels at left guard next to Patrick Paul as a stabilizing factor for a young player at left tackle, like those double teams would be a sight to behold. It'd be like the Rob Hunt, Austin Jackson doubles from 23. And they bodied some folks. I know we look back on that 23 roster and how the offensive line fell apart, and it was a maligned group. But when that duo on the right side was together and they were working combos, they would whitewash some people. I think Donovan Jackson's capable of doing some of the same things. As far as areas for growth for Donovan Jackson from Ohio State, punch placement and timing are inconsistent, which can allow defenders to work into his frame and put him on the defensive. Shows late reactions and anticipation for the need to reframe his set outside of stance against delayed pressures or loopers with stunts and games inside. So this is where the benefit of the quick trigger offense can kind of help mask some of that, but also your execution in this offense puts less time under tension on you for you to operate under a true pass set, drop back, 7-step drop, rip the ball downfield type of offense, right? Things happen a little bit more now, and that's by design. And I don't think, that'll ever change until there's a scheme change and a quarterback change. And like those would be the things that I think would facilitate kind of a how the offense is designed perspective, but they lean into the strengths and traits of the players that they have. And that includes a quarterback with that natural quick trigger and initial wide vision cone. Now, he did play both guard spots in 2021 as a true freshman. So you do have some left side, right side capability. And you have a player who, for the playoff run for Ohio State, played at left tackle. Now, I wouldn't put him at left tackle long-term. I don't think he's an option on the outside because I think that further amplifies kind of the punch timing and the anticipation for framing based off of, when you're initially moved off of your initial set. But you project it into the offense where if you're playing inside and you have bumpers on both sides of you, and it's a very horizontal flow, explode off the ball, move the entirety of the front for boot action and play action, and you're still emulating run, I think it leans into a lot of the things that Donovan Jackson does well. So Jackson projects as a scheme diverse run scheme talent, NFL guard through and through despite his reps at tackle, allowing him to work in vertical angles and help him draw consistent hand fits and block framing to generate expected movement at the point of attack is a strength for him because should be considered a viable starter at the NFL level, but has top-tier NFL athleticism for the interior offensive line. So check some of the boxes, right? Now, if you're not looking for quite an authentic fit, or if Donovan Jackson if he goes to, say, Cleveland or one of those teams picking early in the second round, and he's not there at 48, we're going to shift our focus and talk about a big-time mauler who played tackle at the college level. We're going to talk about Jonah Savaiinaea next here on Locked On Dolphins. Stick with us. Imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd, and witnessing unforgettable moments in person. There's nothing like experiencing the big game there at the big game. Getting tickets for the big game, though, shouldn't be stressful, and that's where Game Time comes in. They make it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices. Game Time Picks is a curation that makes it easy to find best value for tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And when you check on the Game Time app, you can find amazing deals with huge matchups that are near you or concerts with your favorite artists with the lowest price guarantee. So if you find tickets in the same row and section for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference, so you have peace of mind when you buy. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets at the lowest prices, guaranteed. So we're talking Jonah Savaiinaea, offensive lineman from the University of Arizona. And he is a big, mean, nasty offensive lineman. There's some comparables here to if you look at the best fits off the mock draftable, which is the percentile of all the tests combine, some parallels athletically to a Tyler Smith out of Tulsa who in the first round to Dallas. There's also some parallels to Broderick Jones, who's a first-round player. Parallels to athletic profile-wise to Ike Ekwonu, who was a top 10 pick by the Panthers out of North Carolina State a couple years ago. 6'4" and 1/8, 324. He's got tackle length. He's just short of 34 inches on the arms. And he's got linear burst at 4.95 for his 40-yard dash time. So he can get out of the blocks. He's got an 88th percentile 10-yard split with a 1.72. I want to put that number into perspective. A 1.72 10-yard split is a quarter of a second faster in the first 10 yards than Tyler Booker. Think about that. Tyler Booker ran a 1.96 10-yard split versus a 1.72 for Jonah Savaiinaea. That at 324 pounds, big time explosiveness. And that's what I think makes him a potential fit for Miami. He's got a heavy anchor. Read the positives off the report on the 33rd team. Heavy anchor makes it difficult to rush through when defenders convert power against him, generates positive point of attack displacement on gap schemes, illustrates an impactful stun punch that offsets initial rush momentum from defenders. Negatives: as a tackle, lacks dynamic mirror foot speed on the edge. Can struggle at times to flip his hips and carry speed off the edge. Will hinge and open prematurely and create soft angles in the corner. And struggle with chemistry with line mates at times to provide pocket integrity by quickly identifying and passing stunts and lines off between one another. So he played at St. Louis High School in Hawaii, which you should recognize because that's where your starting quarterback played his high school. He's from the American Samoa. He was a 3-star recruit, was invited to the 2022 Polynesian Bowl before a commitment to Arizona. He got interest from Arizona State. He was recruited by Kevin Mbow there. Syracuse. Started all 12 games as a true freshman at right guard. Right guard before transitioning to play right tackle. So this is somebody who has inside-outside capability. There's positional flex here. You get an emergency situation. Or what happens if Austin Jackson goes down with an injury? Well, now you got a guy who potentially can kick out and play right tackle. Right? So he's split between left tackle and right tackle, and he's split between right tackle and right guard. Checks a lot of boxes. Now, is he I think he's better in gap scheme than he is in zone scheme, where I think he's better when it's from a point A to point B, solo block. I'm going to move you off the line of scrimmage. I think that's where it really shines. But you see with the testing, and it gets lost a little bit at tackle because the way that you have to play is a little different because the angles are different. You got to get attached to guys differently. You don't have the bumper to kind of enclose a guy and work across his face. It's just space more often than not, unless you're going to play with a cap tight end on that side. So I think there's a little bit of a leap of faith that's required for Savaiinaea and a projection to playing inside at guard. But man, you'd have a hard time convincing me this is a bad pick because of the floor, because of the power. If you look at the success that you had with a player there before in Robert Hunt, and he was a college tackle that played right tackle that had tackle size and tackle length built like this and kicked him inside, and he had success in the scheme. I think there's enough short area explosiveness, even if it's not super light feet, to mirror and flash with guys along the line of scrimmage. I think Savaiinaea does have the initial explosiveness to really be a tone setter in the offense, because this entire offensive line ideology and the scheme is designed to you're winning your reps within the first 3 steps. More often than not, they're looking for contact in the first 2. And if you get to the third and you don't get contact on the outside zone, then you're turning up and you're looking for color crossing across your face on the second level. And I think life will be easier for him at guard at the NFL level. He's logged just short of 1,000 snaps at right guard, just over 1,000 snaps at right tackle, and almost 350 snaps at left tackle in his college career. That level of versatility from an alignment and usage and experience standpoint, mixed with a player who I think can really be a tone setter in the run game while not compromising some of the explosiveness elements in the way that a Tyler Booker would. If he's there at 48, I think he's a great option. I really do. It's just a matter of does somebody covet him as a tackle? Because I think if somebody covets him as a tackle in the same way that if they covet Donovan Jackson as a tackle, I think that does cut down on their probabilities of being there on the board for you, because Will Campbell might be a guard, right? Josh Connerly and Kelvin Banks might be guards. That if I just look, like Gray Zabel's definitely an inside guy at the next level. So if I'm looking at the hierarchy of offensive tackles, if you want to put Will Campbell in there, fine. He's probably going to go in the top 10, if not top 10, top 12. And if he doesn't go top 12, the Dolphins should probably pick him at 13. Then you have Josh Simmons, Armand Mbow. Armand Mbow is probably going to go top 5, top 10 when it's all said and done. Simmons has a medical flag, but will probably go in the top 40. Then you have Josh Connerly and Kelvin Banks. The only other player left at tackle is Ariante Ursary, and then you're down into Ozzie Trapilos and Cam Williams and Anthony Beltons of the world, unless you covet these guys we're talking about now as tackles. So that's the big mystery for me, is how many teams covet each one of these players that we've just talked about as inside guys or outside guys. And if they covet them as outside guys, they might not make it to you. Now, this next player, really fascinating talent. Redshirt junior out of Purdue, who has some really dynamic play on his tape. We're going to look at Marcus Mbow from Purdue. That's next year on Locked On Dolphins. Stick with us. Marcus Mbow, I kind of like his projection, if I'm being honest, best at center at the NFL level, but there is plenty of evidence that he can play guard or potentially play right tackle. He's a little bit lighter in the trunk. As a offensive lineman, he's 303 pounds. He's 303 at the combine. That's 20th percentile. If you convert that to interior, and if you put it at center, it's 50th percentile, right? But if you just look all offensive linemen combined, it's 20th percentile. He has 32-inch arms, so he definitely does not have tackle length, despite the fact that he played tackle at Purdue. Just a quick primer there. This is another one of the players that the Dolphins had their hands on at the Senior Bowl with Coach Lem and worked hands-on with him. But the positives on his film: super light in the feet, effortless lateral direction ability. I think that's the biggest difference between him and both of the two guys we've just talked about previously as options, potentially at 48. This is the guy that has the short area. I'll block you in a phone booth and you won't consider getting by me, right? Like the lateral redirection ability is effortless. Very sudden change of directions that he's capable of. Positional versatility offers potential to get on the field quickly if charged with playing interior on an aggressive front scheme. Aggressive front scheme is code for a wide zone system that encourages guys to really blow off the ball and fire off the football and dictate terms in the first couple reps. Can be a space weapon on the second level and out by the numbers in outside zone and screen game. You like that? That's the kind of player we're looking for. But there are some negatives with his tape that I would be worried kind of give you more of the same from what some of the shortcomings have been. Strike timing and hand placement are off on the edge and can snowball for really ugly losses at tackle and pass protection. And then, like with the length of 32-inch arms, that's a non-starter for teams. He's going to be an inside guy. It's just a question whether he's a guard or center. Has struggled with precision in his game and has logged significant penalties in 3 consecutive seasons. So if you think about some of the frustrations for the Dolphins offensive line and self-inflicted wounds and ending up killing some of your drives based off of you're trying to put together 8-10 play drives and then you take a penalty. That's been an area for Marcus that has popped up and been prevalent for him across 3 seasons. The last 3 seasons combined, he's got 17 penalties called against him. So something to be mindful of. And I'm worried about his anchor and ability to hold firm against power rushes, particularly if you move him inside and he's got to take 3 techs that have speed to power and have some length because they'll get into his frame, which is why I like him best at center personally. But I think that it is a name to know, and there is some obvious parallel with the scheme. If you were to draft him at 48, I think it makes him a little bit more of a developmental player and probably not an attractive option for you right off the jump. Now, as far as a play experience perspective, 13 snaps in his 4-year career at left guard, 668 snaps at right guard, and just over 1,150 at right tackle. So he's been predominantly a right tackle, but does have experience at both left and right guard. Now, the left guard snaps came as a true freshman. To contrast that against Jonah Savaiinaea, from a exact snaps perspective, he played 345 snaps at left tackle this year, 364 at right tackle this year, and then played 985 snaps at right guard between 22 and 23, and another 700 snaps at right guard right tackle at 2023 as well. And then for Donovan Jackson, his snap distribution missed a little bit of time at the beginning of the season, but did play 286 snaps at left guard, 529 snaps at left tackle, and then was over 825 snaps in both 23 and 22, and all of those snaps came at left guard. So you've got 3 guys that have experience playing both sides, guard and tackle. Donovan Jackson played 61 snaps at right guard in 2021 as a true freshman. But for Marcus Mbow, it's the best stylistic fit, but my concern is it's more of the same. And when you consider they went out and they signed Larry Bohr, right? When you consider they went out and they signed James Daniels, Larry Borum's a downgrade as an overall player from Kendall Lamb as a swing tackle player, but he's a better scheme fit to actually execute the run game. Again, I'm going to try to make a habit of doing this on every show and pointing this out, because some people misconstrue me not verbally berating the team for 30 minutes on every show that I do as me being overly positive for the sake of viewership or for the sake of being a homer. I'm not telling you it's going to work, but I'm telling you why they're making some of the changes that they are based on the shortcomings that the roster had, and why you would change and not bring back Kendall Lamb, who's an experienced offensive tackle with some durability questions as a late stage player, who's really a good pass protector, but not a good run player at this stage of the game, and versus bringing in Larry Borum for comparable dollars because he's got inside-outside flexibility where Kendall Lamb doesn't, and he gives you more juice in the run game. That's why they made the change. I don't need Mike McDaniel to get on a podium or Chris Greer to meet me in an elevator to tell me that. You watch the tape, it's painfully obvious how much they struggled at the point of attack on the right side once Austin Jackson went out. And you look at some of the other personnel moves, like letting a Calais Campbell walk, right? And they're getting younger, and they've got all these draft picks. So younger, more diverse, better in the run scheme. My concern with Mbow being like a legit option at 48, if that's an answer they choose to go, is to me it kind of feels redundant versus some of the shortcomings you've already had, where you're not outreaching guys at the point of attack because you got short arms. You're light in the trunk like Liam Eichenberg is. You're drafting to make a significant position change. And, Mbow played snaps 2 years ago at right guard, but he's been a right tackle exclusive player the last 2 seasons. There's not really movement at the point of attack with consistency in the way that both Donovan Jackson and Savaiinaea both give you. If I had to stack them for my Dolphins specific board, let me make sure I pull up the Dolphins board and not my 30-13 board, because again, I take the 30-13 grades and then I cater them to the traits that we have. I could tell you my offensive guard group shakes out like this. I have Will Campbell as my highest graded guard for the Dolphins system, the guard exclusive player. And then I have Tyler Booker, and then I have Gray Zabel, and then I have Donovan Jackson immediately below that. And then I have Jonah Savaiinaea, and then I have Marcus Mbow. And then I have Tate Ratledge from Georgia, who we're going to find an excuse to talk about as well. Now, that does not include Connor Liam Banks and Ursery, who are tackles for me. But that's some of the names that we've tabled and talked about here. That's how I have them up on my board. I wouldn't be mad about any of them at 48 from a value perspective, though, if they chose to go that route. That's going to do it for me here today on this episode of Locked On Dolphins. I hope you guys enjoyed some more offensive line discussion. You guys showed up in big numbers for the last time we did O-line for 13. I hope you guys come out in big numbers again for this one at 48. And then we will do options at 98 as well. And obviously there's a little bit more tough because there's a 50 pick gap there. So there's a lot that can happen between 48 and 98 as far as who's available, who's still on the board, who slides, all that. But we'll do our best. But we have more ground to cover. We have more positions to explore. We have more prospects to explore at 48. We're going to get into that continuing tomorrow here on Locked On Dolphins. So keep it locked in. It is your team every day. I appreciate you guys as always for checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. I'm out of here. Go Fins.